Hello, buddy. How are you today?
Pretty good. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, and I sure do appreciate this opportunity to be able to talk to you about the new record. I sure have been enjoying it. And first of all, let me start by wishing you a happy birthday.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for helping me out with the blues, sir. 2 months ago we lost the greatest guitar player that ever played, and our last conversation, him, Buddy Waters, and all the greats would always talk about what's going to happen when I go. Is the blues going to die or be kept alive? And I'm trying to keep that promise to them because you know as well as I know when I first started coming to Canada in 1967, most radio stations would play a Muddy Waters or T-Bone Walker every once in a while. And here in America, you find some radio stations. I got a blues half an hour on Saturday night at 3:00 in the morning. And these young generation of kids, 7, 8, 9 years old, never know who Muddy Waters was, Howlin' Wolf, and all those great players. So whatever little help you can give us is certainly appreciated.
Well, buddy, we try and do our best here. We're a national CBC program right across Canada. We're on 2 different CBC channels, and we're on Sirius XM in the States as well. So we play your music, and I love your music, and it's a pleasure to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Buddy, that's one of the things that I've always noticed when I see you in Canada and have a chance to chat with you is that you always mention how appreciative you are of blues fans in Canada and how that helped you along in a very early important part of your career. Could you tell us?
Well, I didn't know who I was until I came to Canada. They had a blues festival there right out of Toronto called Mariposa. And I was invited there in 67 because I was driving a tow truck, and I took a 2 weeks vacation to go play that gig. And when I got there, I think they had right around 30,000 people. I had never saw that. And when I came to the stage, I could hear voices between songs saying, "Now that's the real Buddy Guy." I'm like saying, "Now who was the other Buddy Guy?" And my late friend Junior Well, I had made an album with him called Hoodoo Man. And he had taken a left-handed guitar player out there with him, and they was calling him Buddy Guy. And I said to myself, wait a minute, let me see, can I fix this? And I tried to break my neck. I fell off the stage there, went back under the stage. I had a 100-foot wire, and they had a curtain on the stage where they couldn't see me. I didn't fall, but I braced myself and came from under the curtain playing, and I've been in love with the Canadians ever since that because I never did go back to drive the truck no more.
Yeah, that's an important point in your life then, definitely not having to drive that tow truck, and especially in the Chicago winters, that must have been tough.
Well, my boss looked at me when I come off the 2 weeks vacation. I went back to work. I never just walked off a job. I've been working ever since I was 6 years old, and I never walked off a job unless I said, I'm leaving, and I'll give you time to find somebody else to place me. So when I come off that 2 weeks vacation, I come out of Canada. I think I went to Rochester and Boston. And when I come back and went to work that Monday, my boss just met me at the door and said, "Do me a favor." I didn't tell him what I did. He just said, he knew I could play guitar. He said, "Just don't leave until you teach somebody how to drive the truck like you." And I did that.
Buddy, I wanted to ask you about a few of the tunes on Born to Play Guitar. The opening track, of course, is a very important track in your life, and I love the way that you've been writing your songs with Tom Hambridge, who has produced your records as well. But the story songs that you've been doing on your last few records, and especially this one, Born to Play Guitar, is just such a great tune, and it gives us so much information about you as a person as well. That tune in particular, I think, is perfect to open the album.
Well, thank you very much. I got to give all the credit to Tom on that. He's such a young man and so deep into the type of music that I have played, and the people I learned everything from have played. And he reminds me so much of the late Willie Dixon. He knows how to sit there and get the best out of you. We never had a screaming word or a disagreement on how you do things. The only thing we worry about is when we're in the studio is that Could I do it a little better? I don't know. We're gonna keep that one. I don't know. Just if you think you can do it better, we'll do it better. If you think this is pretty good, I think we got a good one. And matter of fact, the engineer, they was mixing the record. I didn't know it, and when they finished mixing, my manager called me and say, "Did you know your record made the engineer cry?"
Oh.
I said, "Cry about what?" He said, "Man, you got some stuff on there. Somebody gonna listen." But the main thing, if it don't be played, it's like a good meal. If you don't go eat it yourself, can't nobody make you figure out how good it is. You go taste it yourself, and you'll say, "My God, it was right. It's pretty good." So I wait on somebody like you or some other fans, and thank you for helping the blues, by the way, to come back and tell me something good or something bad about the record. So if you tell me something bad about it, maybe I will come back here and say, next time I'll see, can I fix that?
Buddy, the album overall is dedicated to a couple of your heroes, B.B. King and Muddy Waters, and the version that you do with Van Morrison of Flesh and Bone, you dedicate to B.B. King. Can you tell me when you recorded that? At what point did you? Was that before B.B. King passed away and was quite ill?
Yeah, we did that before he passed away because, we was the best of friends. That guy gave me more help than I need and how to accept not doing well with music, because when I first met him and got to know him, he would come and sit down and talk to me. By the way, every time he talked to me, we'd start talking about music, and at the end of the conversation, they had to have a woman in it. But he told me something I couldn't believe. He said, in his heydays, in his 20s and 30s, he was just making enough money to get from town to town. And I point blank asked him once about his records, and he told me, "But I never made a record I really like." And I said, "Well, I better not complain, because if you ain't made a record you like, I just will enjoy playing for the love of music, not the love of money."
And Van Morrison's contribution to Flesh and Bone, you guys go way back, don't you? You and Van Morrison.
Quite a bit, but not as much as I was around Muddy Waters and Howler. We'll see, all of those guys was out before Van and the British guys, the Claptons, the Becknell, before the Stones, before them come out. So my little education in my early days was that's all I would hear. Lightning Hopkins, Muddy, Sonny Boy, Little Walter, T-Bone. I could go on till tomorrow, naming names for you. And then these guys came along and took the music further than the Muddies and the Wolves and the Walters and the Jeff Leno and all those people. And they came in and say, "Hey, man, we got a hold to this stuff," and we just fell in love with it. And technology would better amplifiers. The amplifiers giving you more than a little radio type amplifiers. Mud and BB then was making them hit records off. So we appreciated all those guys who would come in and say, "Man, I can't say no if Buddy asked me to come in on a sing on the album," because we learned so much from them.
I love Come Back Muddy. And by the way, before I mention that, I should say, I know that you were at B.B. King's funeral, and obviously you were very close, and that must have been a very hard time for you to have seen some of your wonderful friends and heroes pass over the years. But Come Back Muddy, I thought was just a great track, and I love the kind of stripped down sound that you went back to, because the very first recordings you did were with Muddy Waters and were acoustically done, weren't they?
Well, that's the first time the Chess people. Matter of fact, it was Leonard Chess, his brother Phil Chess, was doing Muddy, and they wanted the colleges that started listening to that kind of music, which was new to the white audience. And Leonard Chess told Muddy to go to Mississippi and find him an old guy who could play that. And Muddy said, "Set this session up tomorrow. I got it." And when I walked in the studio, Leonard Chess, they would curse a lot. "Who in the hell is this? I told you to go to Mississippi." And Muddy said, "Shut up and start the session." And when he started playing and I started playing the old stuff, Leonard Chess came in, him and his brother, and Willie Dixon, and looked at me and said, "How did you know that?" I said, "That's all I know. I had learned it from them."
Yeah. It's nice to hear you going back to that era again for Too Late, which is a great track off the new CD, Born to Play Guitar. And, of course, that's an old Little Walter tune. That brings you right back to the 50s Chicago blues sound. I'm really glad you picked that tune, and it really touches on another part of your life that maybe people don't remember or recall, from way back when you were sitting in with Little Walter so often in the Chess Studios. Have you been doing that song for a long time too?
No, I haven't, but Muddy be spoken of more than any of those great guys. But that all those guys started out as just a chess record. That was Walter, Muddy, Jimmy Rogers, Fred B. Lowe. They was making hit records. Muddy was the first one to come out. Then Walter come out with Juke and broke off on his own. Junior Wells broke off on his own. All of them played with Muddy. James Cotton, all of them. And let me give you a little story. I was laying here listening to a radio station one day, and the disc jockey, between songs, say they was playing a song by Stevie Wonder. And then Stevie was playing the harmonica, and the guy said, Stevie Wonder revolutionized the harmonica. And I tried to call him. I said, man, you need to wake up, because you could go to the music store before B.B. King made 3 o'clock in the morning, before Little Walter made Juke. You could go. There wasn't no big music stores like we have, guitar centers and stuff like that. You would go to the music store and look at a guitar or harmonica and say, how much you want for that? And the owner would say, I don't know, make me an offer, because I want to get it out the way, because they would sell maybe trumpets and horns. And when Little Walter made Juke and B.B. King made 3 o'clock in the morning, you went back in that store and you had to talk about financing it. A harmonica was probably 25 or 35 cents. Acoustic guitar was $3.95. I don't mean 300. And when him and BB opened that door, man, them guitars went up so high you almost had to buy a guitar to hop like you do a car on time.
Buddy, there's a wonderful tune that you do called Whiskey, Beer, and Wine that kind of reminds me of I'm sure, the early club scene in Chicago. And I wanted to ask you about Teresa Needham, who had that club called Teresa's that was very important in your life. And I understand she was a very important figure in your life overall.
Not at the beginning, because I just got off the train, and a guy had found me after Muddy come in and found me, and he said, well, maybe I can get you a little gig, because I done got stranded, man. I stayed here 3 days without eating at 21 years old, because I had ran out of funds. I didn't think I would make it playing music. I was looking for a day job. And then I was so broke, I was trying to get a dime to call my mother to send me my fare back to Louisiana. And this horn player came by and took me to Teresa's, and you would go in there in the afternoon and plug up and let them hear you, and if you sounded good enough, they would let you come in and play and give you that little $1.50 or $2. If I'd have got that, I would have been back in Louisiana. I don't know if I'd have been talking to you now. But anyway, when I walked in her door, Teresa's Lounge, she had a billy club like a policeman and stood at the door and said, where you going? I said, I've come to let you hear me play. She said, you was in here last week, and I didn't like what you played. I said, ma'am, I just got off the train. I never been here before. And she would curse and told me, say, yes, you have. And finally, she let me go back there by myself, and I plugged up and started playing. And she said, well, why didn't you sound like that when you was in here the other night? I said, lady, I don't even know nobody to play with. And before she died, she laughed about it, because I finally convinced her if somebody else had did it, she thought I was that person.
And didn't she also lend you some money to buy a guitar when you really needed one?
Well, somebody stole my first one. It was a Les Paul, and I was playing at a club called, auditioning, what you call, at a club called Jimmy Mitchell's. And it took a little break, and somebody went in and just picked my guitar up and packed it. I think he had something to do with it, because he said, you sent your valet in, and he got your guitar and gone. I said, man, I don't even know nobody here. So after she had heard me play, she wanted me to play at the place. And the first 3 weeks I played there, she would come and tell me, say, I ain't never had this many people in the club since I've been open. And when I told her I had the guitar, stolen, and she had a husband, and nobody would go to her house because both of them had guns, and it was like, you don't go there. I just went to the house and rang the bell and went in. She had a bottle of whiskey sitting on the floor. I was disgusted. And her husband was standing up there with boxer shorts on. Well, what do you want? I said, I need a guitar, and I come to borrow the money for y'all to loan it to me. And they stood up there and looked at me for 20 minutes before they said anything. And she told me to go back there and get him the $100, and I'm going to take it out when you play. I said, take it out every night. And she did that.
Buddy, a very important thing happened in your life in 1965 when you were invited to take part in that American Folk Blues Festival tour in Europe. And, you were talking about how important Canada was in your career. Of course, that first tour, especially that American Folk Blues Festival tour that had so many of your heroes on it. John Lee Hooker was on there, Big Mama Thornton, Roosevelt Sykes, Walter Horton, Eddie Boyd, who I know was a friend of yours. When you arrived in Europe, that must have been just something that opened your eyes in a big way.
Well, first of all, I had never met John Lee Hooker, and I had never met Big Mama, but Eddie Boyd was here from Chicago. I know him. I know Walter Horton, and they had this great drummer who made all them hits with Little Walter, named Fred Below, the best shuffle drummer I ever heard, and I ain't heard nobody play like him since. And there were just so many people that right now I'll listen to a young person and learn something. And I was learning so much, so I was so excited, and everybody was drinking heavy. And I never will forget this in Germany. The press would come up and start asking questions, and at like 7 o'clock in the morning, John Lee was drinking, Big Mama was drinking, and I was drinking. And they told me, "You're not a blues player." I say, maybe not. He said, because blues players get drunk. And I said, no, the guy had offered me $50 a week to make sure everybody get awake to catch the bus to go to the next country or the next town in Germany, France, or wherever we were traveling. Yes, that's one of the excitements of my life.
You played guitar and bass on that tour, I remember, too, reading about that.
Yeah, I actually on one of my albums called Buddy the Junior's kind of jive, Junior Mass. And I think I did one of my sessions with Vanguard, and I think it was Watermelon Man, and they couldn't get the bass player to get the right tone, and I showed them. They said, well, you played, and I played on my own record. I could think of a tune, I forget what it was. It might have been Money, a guy at Motown Records made it called, named Barrett Strong. I think he made it, and I was trying to do that. Either that or something else. Whatever it was, they made me play the bass on it.
So many artists from Chicago ended up living in Europe, many as a result of tours like that one. Your friend Eddie Boyd, I know, moved to Europe, champion Jack Dupree, of course, Memphis Slim, who you worked with a lot. There were a lot of people, Little Willie Littlefield later. Did you ever consider doing that yourself? Because I know Sonny Boy Williamson talked about that at the end of one of his American blues tours, and even wrote a song about wanting to move to Europe.
Well, I heard about that. Matter of fact, he did. Sonny Boy wanted to live in England. They had to trick him to get him from over there because, you have to have a visa or get some kind of all this paperwork to live there. And they, this is funny here, so I met the promoters who was bringing us over there, and they say, when they finally got him, convinced him to come back home, they took him to the airport, and he got on the plane, and they went to the observation deck to watch the plane take off with him, and the plane took off, and they was waving and watching, and all of a sudden the plane made a circle and was coming back. And they said, oh, my God, the plane, we got him waving here now, and here come that plane back, and the plane landed, and the first somebody stepped off was him. And they say, he had made the pilot turn around because he had left his derby hat.
Europe was such an important part in some of the recordings that you did. some of the recordings, of course, that you did with Memphis Slim, for example, in Europe. But there's an album that is called Stone Crazy that you did with your late brother Phil on guitar as well. And I don't think anybody in North America had made a record like that before. And you did it for a European label, and it didn't even come out in North America for quite a while.
Right. Alligator finally released it, because everybody was ignoring me there. And I remember they had we still have this blues festival in Chicago, and I was between labels, and they asked, one of the big record companies called up and asked one of the big FM stations, what was hot, so they would assign somebody. And they respond, say, well, Buddy Guy was out there, man. They say, Buddy Guy, how old is he now? About 90, and this has been 40 years ago, man. So I didn't give up hope, but my big break come from Eric Clapton and the late Stevie Ray Vaughan, man. The night Stevie's tragic accident, they invited me. I wasn't on the show, and when I flew out there with them, and both of them came to me and said, man, we're going to take you in the studio. Somebody's going to have to record you. And Eric Clapton brought me to Royal Albert Hall, and I played, and that's when somebody from the record company, well, it's been the merge with a lot of them, but it was Silvertone. And he signed me. He was a British agent for it, and I didn't know the record company was in America till they signed me and brought me back here. I thought it was a British label because I felt like Jimi Hendrix. He had to leave here. There wasn't nobody paying attention with all this special effects, and this guy brought him to London, and the British people said, bring it on. For an example, the late Muddy Waters, they brought him over there. I think it was in 58 or 59. And he went over there and had to slide in the amplifier, and they booed him. And the guy, trombone player, still living, the British guy, and he brought him back the next year, and Muddy left the electric guitar and took the acoustic guitar. And they booed him, said, oh, no, we don't want to hear that now. You done introduced us to that slide and that electric guitar. And Muddy told me, he said, man, I'm a victim of circumstance. Say, I messed up the first time, messed up the second time, because he had to do some of that kind of loud stuff. Because they had people like Big Bill Brooms and all those people. There wasn't no super guitar players like the Clapton, the Becks, and all these people now. And they was bringing them over there as acoustic guitar player and playing the acoustic blues.
Yeah, that was Chris Barber, as I recall, who brought Muddy over the first time. Yeah,
I saw him several years ago. I asked lately, they say he's still around.
Yeah. You must have also got a different perspective on how the music business worked from being in Europe and talking to some of the people that had worked for Chess, recorded for Chess. I know Eddie Boyd's song, 5 Long Years was a classic. You've recorded that and still continue to do that in your live shows. When you were talking to people like Eddie Boyd, what would their view of how things were done in America be, and how, their view about the music industry in America, being in Europe and having a different attitude towards that?
I don't know nothing else. I didn't have a different attitude to it. I don't think they had it because the people in Europe was ready for what we was doing here. Even today, I go to Africa or Australia, somebody, and some journalist was asking me, what do you play? I said, I don't know nothing else to play. I just have to be Buddy Guy wherever I go. And that's what, my good friend Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, Jimmy Page, they look at me every time I meet them and see them and say, man, when we saw you in 65, and I went there 65 just in England first, and I played with the Yardbirds just in England, and Rod Stewart was my valet. And they just said, when we saw you play a Strat, man, we didn't know a Strat could play blues. We thought that was a country and western instrument. And all of them, Strats, they had, I think one of the magazines came out once and called me and Jeff Beck the Strat Cats. And it was just, it was a learning. But when I leave here now and go out of the country, I don't know nothing else to play. I got to bring you Buddy Guy just as I do to Canada, here, or wherever. If I go to Canada and say I better play something different, and I don't think nobody's going to come back to see me. I just have to give you 110% of the Buddy Guy, the only Buddy Guy I know.
Well, thank you very much, buddy. I just want to ask you one more question. I really appreciate your time today. a couple of years ago, we saw the reissue of a live recording from the Checkerboard Lounge, which was a club that you had prior to Buddy Guy's Legends. And it's a wonderful recording from a funky little tiny club, I think, of Buddy Guy with the Rolling Stones. What are your memories of that date? I think it was 1979 when you did that live recording.
No, it was 1981.
81. I beg your pardon.
First of all, they had the Stones had been promising to come there 3 times in a row, but they didn't want the media to know. And the media was there with all the networks, and people was hanging off the top of the club trying to get in there, and the club didn't hold but 65 people. And finally, when they did come in there on the 4th time, Junior Wells, my late friend Junior Wells, we was coming out of Vancouver, Canada, and we got 2 blocks from the club that had the street blocked off. And the policeman said, you can't go down there, no more traffic because the Rolling Stones are down there. And one of the sergeants recognized me and said, you can't stop him. He the one who owned the club. When I got there, the club was full. So I said, well, maybe I made a few dollars tonight. And I walked in, the doorman said, you didn't make a dime, because the Rolling Stones crew was 60, and my manager had the other 6 or 7. And the most amazing thing about it, I didn't know Buddy was kind of sick then, and they had brought him in to headline that whole thing. And we all got up and jammed one by one, and then a bunch of us got together. That's one of the most exciting things in my life. I was just being interviewed an hour before you, and the guy asked me, what's the most exciting thing you ever get? Was it playing in the White House, the medals and the honors out of God? I said, man, and the White House was great. All the honors that I've got is great. But man, to be on the stage with Muddy Waters, that's one thing I cannot forget, because all those are moments that I'm going to carry the rest of my life. And that's one of the bigger ones, because the media said the smallest club in the world had the Rolling Stones at it, and that still stands out in my mind today.
Thank you so much, Buddy. I really appreciate your time. We'll be playing lots and lots of your music, and I love the record, Born to Play Guitar. Thank you, Buddy.
Well, thank you so much, son. I appreciate that. Anything you can do to help me keep the blues alive, I'm appreciative of it. And whenever I come that way, make sure you come backstage and get a glass of my wine.
Okay. Love to. Thank you.
Thank you.